This is part 2 of the Storytellers Lounge conversation with M.A. Dennis. I asked Dennis how old he was when he started to write.
I would say I started telling stories in elementary school because I distinctly remember when they used to give the standardized tests, and they would give you a little essay book, little blue, usually blue pamphlet, and you're supposed to write a essay in it. I remember, because those things were timed, and then they would tell you, well, time's up, pencils down. And I'd get so upset because I'm like, no, this story is just getting started, man. I just got to the aliens. Like, come on, what are you doing? Let me finish your story,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first thing you wrote?
I don't remember the first thing I wrote, but I do remember certain things. Like, I remember certain things about writing. So, for one thing, I remember my first English teacher. Those were always my favorite class, English, right? So when I was a freshman in high school, I had this English teacher. I don't remember his name. I know he was a Irish man, and I think we were doing Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man, right? And so we had to do a book report. And for whatever reason, I was writing the book report, and I was just really caught up in it, and I curse, like like you might say something, you might say, oh shit, and I wrote what I was actually thinking in the moment, and then I crossed out, I scribbled out the curse. When he gave me back the report, he had written a little handwritten note, and he was like, just speak your truth. If it's a curse, it's a curse. And wouldn't you know that when I did the next report, because he had given me this license, oh man, all of the curses, because I come from a different era where you cursed in your mind, and even in your mind you didn't curse because you feel like they could still read it and pop you upside the head. So I had so much cussing in me, to like just bit pent up, that I just went crazy. Every other line, fuck, all this, right? And this time he didn't write it on the paper. He said, come see him after class, and he had a little conversation with me. He said one or two was okay. He said, I think you got a little carried away.
Oh, take it
So,
easy
yeah,
with the curses.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
and that wisdom has stuck with me to this day, because there's all types of areas of debate, when it comes to writing and poetry. And that is one of those areas that people will debate, right? Do you use profanity? So to me, I look at profanity the way I would look at spices, seasonings. You have a cabinet, like if you think of all of the seasonings when you go into the supermarket, there are some seasonings that you will never need to, you could cook 100 recipes, right? You may never need to use allspice, but there will be one recipe that you have to use allspice.
Yeah.
If you don't use it, it's just not going to come out right. So that's how I think of profanity. I would even compare it to almost like salt. The more you use it, like a dish is okay if it doesn't have too much salt, because you can always add.
Right.
But once you've exceeded the limit, then you've ruined it.
Right.
So that's my little spiel on that.
Yeah.
You have more than one book, correct?
Actually,
no?
yeah, I have two books of my own, and I actually bought, because here's another thing: as poets, sometimes we have to remind ourselves of our ability, our craft, like what we've accomplished. Because I went to go look for my two books, and then I saw a stack, and I said, let me look at this stack. So this is a stack.
I saw you brought one. Whoa.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so this is a stack of books. It has my two books in it, but this is just a stack of published, anthologies that I've had work put in. So it's good. When I am having my moments of, imposter syndrome, I can say, no, I think I'm pretty good at this. I have some empirical data that supports.
That's a good
Yeah.
feeling. It
Yeah.
is.
And at some point, if we have time, I want to do something a little different because I know, like, as a poet, they ask you to read a poem, and I mentioned before how I love music, right? So I currently have a free subscription trial period for this music thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been going crazy, listening to all of the songs that I want and making playlists. Because for me, making playlists is a love language, right? So one of the things that singers always do is, they do a medley. Then you go to the concert, they give you a medley. So I said, man, I think I want to try that. I want to try to do like the singers do. So I'll do, if we have time at a certain point, I'll do a little poetic medley.
Oh, we have time.
Okay.
I was told by several people that people don't have long attention spans.
You said it. I thought it, but you said it. So.
Yeah, but I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So you are free to read or to do whatever you like, and then there'll just be part one, part two.
But I do feel that that's an important enough thing to talk about just for a second. The whole thing about the attention span, right? Because attention span, it's a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
If you work out regularly, you can lift, more and more weight. Now, if you stop doing that for a certain period of time and you go back, before you could easily bench press 100 pounds. If you haven't done it in a while, it's going to be a struggle. But it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just going to mean you got to build
Right,
back
you
up
have
the
to
strength.
start again.
So it's the same thing I feel with attention span. So you are absolutely right. Everyone has it, unless there's some sort of medical issue. But aside from that, everybody has it, and you can see it because the things that we're interested in and we're passionate about, we give them all the attention we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So sometimes I think it's just because there is such a demand on our attention from everything. Everybody has a podcast. Everybody wants our attention. So I don't think it's so much the attention span, is that we just get overwhelmed. Like how do I break up this attention? How do I give everybody attention?
Right.
So I think that what they are saying is, if you do a little more, bite-sized pieces, at least you'll draw people in, and then they can.
Right, it's like small meals.
Yeah, like
you
hors
eat a little
d'oeuvres.
bit of food. Yeah, hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah.
Right. So
I want to give a shout out just to the Staten Island poetry community, because there is a lot of beautiful diversity and differences in it. I'm telling you, like, I have so many of my, brethren and sistren, they just live in my head rent free. I know poets who have, they make sure, I make sure I have clean underwear because I heard them talk about it in a poem. Sometimes if I'm editing someone's poem, I might just take the first line and the last line and tell them get rid of the rest, because I heard someone in a poem say that. I think about, getting run over by a truck and comparing it to being born by a mechanical mother. I think of poets who their middle initial is G, and it reminds them of the Hurricane Gil, and poets who are dainty 18th century Japanese teacups. I just get so inspired, and I'm not even scratching the tip of the iceberg that brought down the Titanic. There's so many great poets and storytellers, and just want to shout them out.
This is the end of part 2 of our conversation with M.A. Dennis. In part 3, Dennis will begin a poetic medley. I really can't wait for part 3, so please join us.